ask everybody to mute their microphones, please. I think, yeah. Thanks, Janice.
Hey, Pam.
Oh,
Hi, Pam.
welcome.
It's great to see you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Looking great, Pam.
Why, thank you. I'm feeling good. Yeah.
Hi,
Okay.
Alex.
7 o'clock, folks.
Evening. Hi.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our council meeting. I'll take my mask off because it's just Sarah and I in the council chambers, and we're social distance. Council are all at home or at an office somewhere. Our management team are in their offices, and so it's a pretty quiet at City Hall right now. So with that, I'd like to encourage our community to continue following the guidelines of the Provincial Health Officer. She's been doing an exceptional job of leading us so far, and you know, there is an end in sight for us. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge leading up to and over Christmas, but having said that, there's far more greater challenges out there than having to wear a mask when you're out and about, or to having to stay within your bubble. So please follow the directions, and we'll all be safe, and we'll get through this together. And with that, I'd like a motion to I'd like to give the Aboriginal Acknowledgement first. We would like to acknowledge that the land of which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Tanaha, the Silix and the Sinix peoples, and is home to Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honour their connection to the land, rivers, and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. And with that, I'd like to know if there's any late items. I don't believe there are. Okay, and I'd like a motion, please, to adopt the agenda. Councillor Woodward, seconded by
Sorry, John, I did have one late item.
Mayor John, you have one late item. Okay?
Sorry, Mayor John.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt for the time lapse. We call it a time lapse here. Okay, Councillor Page.
Yeah, no, I just want to talk about the letter from the library and the letter from Castlegar about housing.
Okay, and those were in committee reports, I think. At least the library one is for sure. So,
yeah, we can weave those together.
Yeah, bring them up in your reports then if you wish. Yeah, I think that'll be the handiest, right? So in committee reports, you see that's on your agenda, and anybody that's liaising to any of those committees, you're more than welcome to highlight a particular item on that agenda if you wish. Thanks, Councillor Page. So we had a mover, we had a seconder, all in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. Just as we go through the meeting, because we have a lot of people on the screen, Sarah, if we can keep council up as much as possible so that I can see who's voting one way or the other. I'm not sure how we can do that, to be honest with you, but
If you have everybody else keep their video off, then I can, other than stop.
okay. So Sarah's telling me that anybody that doesn't need to be on the screen to please keep your video off, and that allows me to be able to see council and how they react to a particular item, or if they wish to speak to a particular subject, I can see their hand go up. Otherwise, when everybody's on, I end up with some of the councillors blocked out of view. So bear with us, everybody. We're doing the best we can, and Sarah's been awesome trying to work our way through this Zoom idea as we go forward. And now I'd like a motion to adopt the minutes of the previous meetings, if we could, please. Mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Renwick again, and Councillor Page second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Morrison.
We don't have any previous minutes to adopt from what I can see from the agenda.
You did,
There are no
nothing sent out to you? Okay, very good. Number 6 then, recommendations from the committee of the whole. There are none of those. Requests, delegations, and the first item on the agenda is bylaws. And this is where we're going to get 2 new faces on the screen, Alex and Pamela from Development Services. Gabe? Oh, sorry, Gabe will be up first, I beg your pardon. The procedures bylaw, I beg your pardon. So Gabe, if you're still with us, you're up next. So Council's procedure bylaw is before Council incorporates changes previously presented to Council by staff, along with some additional changes requested by Council, and also a number of housekeeping issues found in the current procedures bylaw. Council is now requested to adopt the procedures bylaw number 3491/2020. And there is a staff recommendation, and if any one of our councillors wishes to make a
I'd like to
motion.
move the motion.
And the
Move the motion.
moved by Councillor Morrison and second by Councillor Page. And the motion reads that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Council Procedure Bylaw number 3491/2020 be finally adopted. And if there are, the mover may speak and the seconder may speak, or anyone else has any comments. Okay, then I'm going to call the question. All in favor? I see all hands up. Thanks very much, everybody. Onward and upward. So the traffic bylaw, and this one is for the region. The City of Nelson has an agreement with the regional district to provide bylaw enforcement in the Nelson District Community Complex parking lot that is consistent with the City of Nelson's 2-hour parking zone regulation. As a result of the city's traffic bylaw must be amended to allow for this. The proposed bylaw amendment also addresses some issues around impoundment of vehicles in relation to snow and leaf removal. Okay, so with that, Councillor Lochtenberg, are you moving? Second by Councillor Renwick. And Councillor Lochtenberg is moving that the City of Nelson Traffic Impoundment and Ticket Amendment Bylaw number 3516/2020 be finally adopted. Are there any questions before we go to the... Yes, Councillor Lochtenberg?
I'd like to make an
then
amendment.
Councillor Anderson next.
I'd like to make an amendment to include in the, and I'm not sure how to do this, Gabe, so I'm assuming you're going to correct me if I get this wrong, but it's regarding the impoundment of vehicles. We have a list under section 34A. I'd like to include blocking the electric car charger, any electric charging station by a non-electric vehicle.
So Councillor Lochtenberg, there's a number of signs up at the community complex as an example for handicap parking, fire lanes, and including the electric charging station. And I'm not sure if you want to put that in isolation on its own, because that's part of what would be enforced on that site, as well as if you're parked along a yellow curb, blocking an exit or entrance to a facility. All of that is marked and well identified on the site.
That could be, and maybe that's enough. I'm just under 34. It says, in a position that causes it to interfere with the construction, improvement, alteration, extension, widening, marking, repair, maintenance, leaf cleanup, or clearing, sand cleanup, or street sweeping of a highway. So I get that. Is there not? Because this has come up a few times where people have parked in front of electric charging stations. And preventing other people from, and what is the remedy for, or how do you get those vehicles out of there if they don't move it?
So there is signage there to indicate that that's what that parking space is for. And if a person's parked in it and they're not charging their car, they'll be towed just as they would be if they were in a handicap zone, or on a yellow line, or in a fire lane, or blocking an exit, or parking beyond the boundaries that are currently laid out for open parking on that site.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Councillor Anderson,
don't
you
make an
okay?
amendment.
Okay, Councillor Anderson?
I'm good, thank you.
You're good, okay. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried, thanks very much, thank you. And the next one up probably includes Pam and Alex, I think. And that's the Development Services proposing a bylaw amendment to the land use bylaw that includes offering options to relax lot coverage restrictions in residential zones, allowing for secondary suites in a duplex or on a large lot, increasing the minimum site area in a residential zone and prohibiting data centers and is that cyber what does that say there, Sarah?
Data centers and cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency. Oh boy, it would be nice to have some of those shares. Mining operations and land use. Hopefully you understood that, Council. So you see there's an extensive amount of report here from Alex and Pam, and with that there's also a staff recommendation. In fact, there's 4 pieces to this particular puzzle. And hopefully Council has an opportunity to go through this. Alex, do you want to give us a bit of a thumbnail sketch of exactly what you're trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mayor Dooley. It is a bit of a break here, so I'd be happy to take questions on any element of this here. But if short of going through everything sort of item by item, which would be a lot, I think the biggest, clearly the most complicated piece of this is around lot coverage. So if I would speak, I would speak to this. And so to first sort of explain, where we're coming from with this, these aren't necessarily, it's not necessarily easy to understand at first compared to our pretty simplistic way of looking at lot coverage right now. And it wasn't certainly easy to reach this recommendation either, but the background is coming from variance applications. We get, you of course as council see all variance applications. Occasional one slips into the realm of the Board of Variance, but of course staff get a lot more inquiries about variances as well too. And there's obviously great things about variances because it allows council to have some discretion on a case by case basis. But the downside is, and I know as it came up fairly recently with the variances for 611 Vernon Street, for example, where council was saying, well, could we have a few different requirements or conditions, let's say, of a variance? It's tricky, if not impossible, to do sometimes. Someone might be justified in having a variance, for example, but all you can really do is give them that variance without necessarily gaining something, quote unquote, for the city. It also does put staff in a difficult position to continually see cases where a variance, say for lot coverage, seems justifiable, and then having to continually recommend in favor of these variances instead of considering amending the rules. That's sort of the direction that we have as staff is when problems keep coming up with the rules, we need to relook at the rules. So that's the background with this here. So the thought process was thinking about, well, in terms of council objectives, something from the official community plan and recent priorities, well, what is it that we could potentially say, well, if you as a homeowner or a potential variance applicant, you could get your extra lot coverage, you're going to have to do something, performance criteria, rather than just ask and pay a $500 application fee for a variance and then stand a pretty good chance of getting it as well. So thinking through a bit of a performance criteria system, that's where we got to with this. There's definitely a bit to it in terms of what percentages people could achieve for lot coverage. As you can see in the legislative precedent section, it's not completely out of line with where a lot of other cities already have their lot coverage maximums sort of as of right, no strings attached. Here, this would be proposing a system where there certainly are strings attached, no strings attached to continue to have the exact same lot coverage possibilities as people have now. But what for staff and dealing with potential variance applications, what this would do would be giving us a possibility of saying, well, okay, this doesn't make sense what you're saying. For having an additional 5-10% lot coverage on your site because of X, Y, Z circumstance. But instead of saying, well, you could go to council, apply for a variance, and we'll recommend in favor. Well, here's things you could do. You could consider a green roof. There's if a structure is just an accessory building, so no more than 4.5 meters tall, you get a little bit extra to avoid just raising the lot coverage outright, in which you could fill up with a large home that measures 10 meters tall. There certainly are things for council to consider with this proposal, nonetheless. Most notably just in terms of what that's going to look like when things are fully built out. When you have a larger lot, in a lot of uphill lots, for example, and actually all of our neighborhoods, particularly once a couple lots have been consolidated over the years, a lot of the properties these days measure over 555 square meters. So by this table here that's in the report, even if an applicant was able to check off each and every box, provide 3 dwelling units, have a green roof, they'd get to 50% lot coverage, which still gives you 50% of a fairly large lot area. Where this is going to be more visibly noticeable is potentially on those smaller lots, in the 25-foot lots. By the time, to be quite frank, by the time we already have 40% lot coverage on those smaller lots, 45 in the R3 zone for smaller lots, and already people notice that sometimes they're filling up these days. People are building up to 10 meters tall, to 9.97 meters tall in many cases, and once you subtract the area that's sort of just alongside a house, the side setbacks that people have to maintain, which doesn't count against lot coverage, you end up with a very small, sometimes no real yard area. You have a duplex going up on a 25-foot lot. By the time you have the 4 minimum parking spaces, it's true that there's already not much of a yard, if anything, and this wouldn't necessarily change it, but because we're often not seeing much of a yard anyway when people are really going all the way. So there's certainly things to consider here, but which is why under proposal 1B here in the report, staff are proposing to increase the minimum permeable area to at least help deal with some of those stormwater management issues. Leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay, we'll have a mover and a seconder if we can, and then we can have further discussion if you wish. Moved by Councillor Renwick, second by Councillor Lockenberg for discussion. And now I'll leave it up to the mover and seconder to have the first check at the cat, as the saying goes, and then we'll go from there. So Councillor Lockenberg, you had your hand up first.
Alex, so just 2 questions for you. What happens, is this a one-time payment? I'm not totally clear, and it might be in the bylaw itself that I haven't actually dug into. But if I pay my penalty, am I sort of one and done, or does it come back, on as long as you're not paying it, you get 2 weeks, and then it gets added on top? How does that work?
So for a bylaw ticket, it depends. So say if there's a land use issue, it's not like a parking ticket, right? Where you move your car and you're gone. The sort of the general practice is if things keep going is tickets can be start by issuing every month. I was just talking to the Bylaw Enforcement Department about some of these cases this morning. They would tend to start with once a month, and theoretically we can issue the same ticket every single day. So say a $500 ticket every day.
Every day, okay. And
theoretically we can.
And okay, and if I'm understanding, that's in the bylaw. That's just all bylaws. That's in the community charter. Bylaw enforcement allows you to do it on a daily. Okay. Can I have a follow-up, Chair,
yes,
or I'll wait my turn? Yep. It's related to I'm curious about how under traffic, and this isn't an issue yet, but I can imagine it becoming one. If we do start, assuming we start to put in bike lanes, what happens when somebody blocks a bike lane? It's pretty common in bigger cities. I mean, anywhere there's bike lanes, you often run into problems where people are just parked in the bike lane. Do we have anything related to that? Or I know we don't have any bike lanes per se yet, but assuming we get them, how does that fit in here?
I think you're looking at one report ahead, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, am I?
Not the zoning one, but I can answer your question now anyway. It's a good question. We definitely don't have any traffic bylaw tickets specific to bike lanes, which is not surprising. But I'd have to double check, but I'm quite sure that there's general provisions and a ticket as well too with obstructing traffic. You can't obstruct a sidewalk. I know that results in a ticket, and I know obstructing the road results in a ticket as well too.
Okay,
So I would
Okay,
assume
thank
that same provision would apply.
that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay,
So just to be clear, do we still have a seconder for the zoning one we're in front of?
so we have four pieces of this puzzle here and each one has to be done separately. So we're on number 1 now, the zoning amendment bylaw, lot coverage and density bylaw number 3512, 2020 be introduced and read a first and second time by title only. So we can go through with that and then we deal with the next three.
Rick, you're good to second that same first one on the other item?
We had a mover and a seconder on that
Yeah,
already.
I'm good to second it.
You okay?
Maintain my second.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. And the next one is the council directs staff to schedule a public hearing for the zoning amendment lot coverage and density bylaw 3512-2020. We need a mover and Councillor Morrison.
I just want to be recorded as opposed.
Oh, sorry, to the previous?
Yes, yeah,
No, you didn't speak to it. Were you trying to get on?
yeah, I was, but it's okay. I just record me as opposed.
Okay, fair enough. Generally speaking, you'd have an opportunity to speak to it if you were opposed, what your challenge was, and potentially we could figure that out before we moved on.
Well, I'll just tell you. I mean, everybody was in favor, so my opposition doesn't hold much weight. It's just that I'm not too sure that I'm in favor of increasing the density, because I think there's some unintended consequences here that could occur, particularly on these small lots. I did read the whole report, and I wonder how this relates to the OCP. I also wanted to know kind of where the ACP was in terms of the APC, in terms of approving this and what their discussion was like. And what I see in that, not next year or the year after that, but what I see is that once 4 units can start to be built on a site, and I look at my backyard here, I could have a regular party in the next 5 years, is that I would imagine that over time that there will be this comeback to actually stratify many of these properties. And although we don't allow stratification of carriage houses, but as we start to increase the size of them and increase the lot coverage and put in more things, I would see that that's going to come back. And I consider that an unintentional consequence of these bylaw changes, is that there will come a time when there is, given the rising cost of property here in the city of Nelson, that there will be a push to stratify off these now large, potentially larger carriage houses that could in fact have a suite in them. Anyways, enough said. I'm opposed. Thank you.
Okay, so, and thanks for that. It's always good when you get an opportunity to speak to and give staff some idea of what your thoughts are, because the next number 2 is that the council directs staff to schedule a public hearing on the zoning amendment lot coverage bylaw number 3512-2020. So we'll hopefully get some feedback through that public hearing as well, Councillor Morrison, and some of your questions may come up as well, and I'm glad you brought some of them to light early on in the process, so thank you for that. So we need a mover and a seconder for the, Kevin, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just, yeah, there's quite a bit of change here, and I think we probably want to do some work to show what that looks like on these different lots. It's hard to visualize it with numbers. So I did ask Alex and Pam to, do that heading into the public hearing. And you may want to choose not to go straight to public hearing, like you maybe have some type of open house by Zoom or WebEx or something, so that the community understands what this looks like. I hear what, I had a similar concerns that Councillor Anderson or Councillor Morrison had. Is just that I think our community needs to understand what this looks like on the ground a bit and have some real meaningful input, and I think we might want to look at ways to share this where people can understand, or we're going to potentially be debating numbers without really understanding what that looks like on the ground.
And on that note, I'd also like to say for the public and for council is I noticed on the when Alex made his presentation, he talked about we may require people to use a green roof. Well, have we done any homework on the costs benefit analysis one way or the other, from conventional as to a green roof as an example? Somebody that's worked in construction for just about all my working life, I can tell you the cost of construction as it is today is getting out of reach of the average person on the street, and some of these levers that may be turned over to politicians could drive up the cost of people's homes without actually accomplishing what we're trying to do, and that's create some affordability for people. And that's why we're creating this density in the first place, is to help create affordable housing for much of our population. And if some of these suggestions in this package could have the direct opposite impact on affordability, should they be left in the hands of local politicians to decide where a green roof should be or where it shouldn't be, at the cost of the person developing, or not, maybe stopping the development completely. So it's not that I'm opposed to green roofs, it's just I'm saying that it's unfortunate that it's being portrayed as a lever for people to get the kind of density they might require.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good example of why I think it's important to maybe take some time and share this, because there's a number of alternatives to achieve that less hardscape, I guess, in lack of better words. So part of this is actually managing our runoff. So you might do that by not paving your driveway or some other things. So there's a bunch of alternatives. I think I'm fair to say, Alex, that that's one of the alternatives, but that's not the only tool you have to avoid this potential challenges with stormwater when we have these more frequent storm events. How do we trap that on someone's site as opposed to getting it right in our storm where we're now trying to manage that? So that's why I think, like I said, another good example of being able to explain all this, because it's, again, there's a lot there, and it's it's hard to really connect all those dots.
If I could speak as well too, just to a couple of these last points. Councillor Morrison first brought up, well, what is, in terms of the APC. The APC didn't have, when this went to their meeting in October, didn't have comment discussion on the density provisions, but definitely around lot coverage and the green roof discussion. So to tie what the APC had to say and the discussions we had with them into this, we had a discussion started from a similar standpoint about cost and affordability. But to be clear, a green roof would not be required. So in order to build to the same same height, the same lot coverage that's allowed today as of right, in December 2020, 35%, sometimes 40% on a smaller lot. Nothing is changing for that at all. There's no green roof required. It's only it would only be a condition in order to get an automatic 5% lot coverage increase So to go from your 35% to 40% without having to go to council for a variance. So if you're coming in, you're like, I want this, people are always free to apply for a variance as well too. I should say that we can't, as staff, we're not able to filter them out. So in a way, nothing really changes for people. If someone's wanting to get to 38%, if this bylaw is passed, they could come in and say, well, this is one of your options. It's covering about half of your roof surfaces with the green roof, and you can, we can approve that right away, or you can, of course, still go to council and ask for a variance. In terms of the other options of managing storm water on site, surface permeability, part of this again is proposed to increase that. We already do have a requirement for residential lots that at least 30% of the site must be permeable in some way, shape, or form. And the proposal would be to increase that to 40%, precisely because of these lot coverage relaxations. And there's many ways of doing that. On a really tight, if people are trying to maximize their lot coverage and it's a really small lot and they're making it really tight, in many cases that would have to mean having some sort of permeable driveway surface, for example, versus a concrete driveway. So that has been considered in here. The difference is if for providing additional lot coverage area, a green roof is something that gets permitted. It goes through a building permit process. We can sort of verify its effectiveness, so to say, that is built to a certain standard. And it's because it's on a building, it's sort of easier to keep track of, because modifying a building would require some kind of permit. There's building code that gets involved with that. The challenge with giving, in my opinion, with giving a lot coverage relaxation for more site permeability, like a completely permeable driveway, for example, is that there aren't any permits that get permitting processes that get triggered when someone wants to change that. People can go, tomorrow and pave their driveway, which, perhaps it could be, intentional on the part of the current homeowner, but in the future, a future homeowner who didn't know that the previous one got a lot coverage relaxation could very innocently pave over their driveway and without knowing that they did anything wrong per se.
Yeah, it's just, I think, Alex, and this goes back to what Councillor Morrison was saying earlier. She made some good points. I'm just wondering if we're putting a signal out to the public now that we've chosen a particular model, that if you were to look for a 5% variance, which is not very much when you're talking about lot coverage for a small dwelling to start with, you may not even do it if you had to put a green roof on the whole building. If you're talking about green roof and 5% of it, then you might get some uptake, and it would depend on the design of the building as well. So I'm somewhat surprised that I'm not surprised the green roof would be in there, but I'm very surprised that it's the only option that would be available to a person to get that 5% lot coverage. I think that's pretty narrow thinking, to think that the public would go forward with a project that would have additional 5% footprint, which is not much, on the basis that they could get it if they got a green roof. So I'm just curious to know how you would, if that's our starting point, would we not have a variety of options available to us, or a variety of ideas and suggestions?
We could certainly think about a variety of ideas further. We certainly did as staff, and in terms of it's coming from a pretty different stormwater management perspective. The most some of the most straightforward way of compensating for more sort of concrete and wood covering a lot is by considering green roofs. It's definitely similar conversation what we had at APC as well too, where it's not a lot. This is, in that sense, installing a green roof, the requirement would be, as proposed here, for half of the roof surface, so not entirely the whole surface, but it is true that it's only 5% that you get out of it, which in that sense, if you look at it from that perspective, that it's maybe no one would go for it, then it really is sort of a minor amendment from that perspective. That we're of trying to sort of experiment a little bit and not make a huge step. And again, that variance option, still would continue to exist. It's for people who want more lot coverage but don't want to do a green roof for any reason. They don't have to disclose that, of course. But it is a bit of an experiment, which is why staff aren't proposing we'll put in a green roof and get a 20% lot coverage increase. It would be interesting. It's very minor, and I totally agree that I wouldn't be surprised if no one took us up on this in the next year or two. But it would be it'd be interesting to experiment with it and see if anyone does and in what circumstances, and start to learn from that instead of making a big leap.
Yeah, I think from my experience, Alex, it would be nice to be able to see a structural engineer's report beside some of this paperwork to show what the difference in cost is to add 5% on your building and make that 5% a green roof. Just from my experience, limited experience, I would suggest that most people would just simply walk away from it. So, Councillor Lochtenberg? Oh, you're muted. Yeah, you're muted, sorry.
Sorry, which motion is on the floor right now? I'm just confused.
To go to public hearing. Number two.
So
Who moved it and seconded it? I just wasn't sure if we actually got that far.
Sorry, this is Gabe. We don't have a mover or a seconder right now.
Okay, so we're not debating. So I'll move it?
I think so. Councillor Page, you putting your hand up for the move? And Councillor Renwick second?
No, I have a question.
Oh, you have a... We'd like to put this on the floor if it's about... We were talking, actually backed up to the previous one, even though it was passed, because Councillor Morrison didn't speak at the time. She voted opposed without speaking, and then she had her comments after, so...
I would move this for discussion, please, and I have a question.
Okay, so it's moved by Councillor Page, and you're seconding it at this point. Yeah.
we just...
And so it's moved
Sorry,
and seconded.
point of
Just a
order.
second, Councillor Lockenberg. It's moved and seconded. And Councillor Renwick, as a seconder, has a question. And then we'll go to you, Councillor Lockenberg.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I read through this several times, and I know, Alex, you deal with this every day, and I don't. And I find some of this very confusing. And I would like to put a motion on the floor to send this back to staff, to come back to us with some solid examples of where this would work, or where some of this would apply within town on some certain properties. I'm a show me kind of guy, and that seems to work when you can say on this property you can do this and you can't do that. That would be a motion I'd like to put forward, please.
So you would need a seconder for a motion at this point in time, Councillor Renwick.
Just a point of order on that. We do have the motion on the floor, so we'd have to defeat this motion and then
Right.
and then introduce. But just a quick question on that order. We did have this motion already be passed. So if I'm understanding, we're kind of rewinding back to, because Councillor
Right.
Morrison didn't have a chance to speak to it. We're just unwinding that. Is that just so I'm clear? That's
We
what we're doing?
unwound that. That was what the
Okay.
Yes, we unwound that.
Yeah. So we
Is that-
unwound the previous motion,
Yeah,
and now we're back to.
but it
okay.
it is passed. There was additional comments to it. So we're on the one to direct staff to have the public hearing at this point.
Can we amend the last one instead? We could move an amendment.
Can I just, where we're at in the process is, this is first and second reading, and you would go to public hearing, you get information back from the public, which could include, we could produce material such as Councillor Renwick had suggested. But as I suggested before, maybe before we go to public hearing, we might want to, have more of an open house. Right, and that could even be a workshop with council first to see what that looks like in the ground. So even though you're advancing this, what's there today might be quite different by the time you get to third reading, by the time you have maybe a workshop or an open house or public hearing. So I think there's a lot here, and I do think it warrants your time to really understand what that does look like in the ground, and what other avenues. For example, I agree with Alex in terms of keeping track of things are always challenging for us, and but we can register covenants on title for things like what the things around the property. So I think there's some other avenues that we can talk about a bit more as staff. So people have some other ideas. So I would suggest either you have a workshop with council to explore this further, or if you're comfortable enough, go to a more of a public open house where we can put a little bit more meat on the bones and let people know what this looks like, because it is quite a change, and it's not about clean roofs. It's really more about lot coverage, and I think the other thing is what Alex had mentioned is what they're trying to solve primarily is most of these things are going to council, and you're putting your hand up and agreeing for all these changes. So in this range, and what do you want to do about that? Do you want to just keep these coming individually, or do you want to look at your lot coverage? What staff is proposing is, one from an administrative point of view, get that off your plate and, give staff the latitude to approve these in exchange for the city getting something back. Now, you may like that model, or you may just say, let's make 40% lot coverage the norm. So, so if you need more information to really understand the options, etc., then maybe you want to have a workshop with council and really explore those things outside a formal meeting where it's really hard to, decide whether a green roof or permeable pavers or lot coverage or all these factors that are kind of all in here. I think there's been some really creative thinking by staff, and trying to solve stormwater, lot coverage, density, a whole bunch of things we're trying to solve. How many variances come to council? So there's a whole bunch of things going on, and maybe stepping back a little bit and taking some time and doing workshopping this with council might be the best next step. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's very good, Kevin. I think that's an important piece to put out on the table. I also think it'd be worth our while having a good conversation about why we created laneway houses in the first place. And that was to create affordability and opportunity. And, where I see us going now is we've had success on that area, and now we're deciding we're going to put different parameters around density and how people can create affordability. And I can understand why we would want to definitely have the upper hand on how development happens, but we got to be really careful that we're not backtracking on the vision in the first place. And I think that vision needs to be up on the wall, so we're all kept in touch with it, that the average person in our community is facing an affordability crisis, and we can't be adding to that crisis by requiring additional components to construction that's going to drive up the cost, because we'll basically eliminate the opportunity for development in the first place. So I think you're right. Maybe a workshop might be in order to. So just to go back to where we were, I think what we'll do is we have to defeat the first motion, which is to go to, or we can withdraw public hearing. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can withdraw the public hearing one, and as Councillor Renwick's motion then would go forward to have further review by staff and council.
We need a mover, so we have to
Yeah.
a mover and we need a second on that.
Yeah. So.
Let's
Withdraw the second one, which is number 2, would be withdrawn. We need a mover and a seconder to withdraw number 2. Councillor Renwick and Councillor Page, thank you. All in favour? Now, Councillor Renwick, your motion, you can put it forward again if you wish.
I guess my motion is then just to refer back to staff for more information and to hold an informational workshop for council.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Woodward, thank you. Questions or comments? Oh, sorry, two questions, one from Councillor Woodward and one from Councillor Luchtenberg.
Go ahead, Rick. You were first. I'll go after you.
Okay, thanks, Jesse. I just wanted to respond, Mayor, to that point. I wanted to stress in directing back to staff that yes, our objective is affordability and increasing density, but we don't want to do it at the cost of, for example, our stormwater system. Like, it's just sort of trading one cost and creating another cost over here. So I think a workshop's a great idea to look at the whole picture so that, you know, we don't create unintended consequences and further expenses on the taxpayer.
Yeah, exactly. Councillor Woodward?
Thank you, Mayor. So Alex, I know you guys work really hard on this stuff, and I think one of the hard things is that you know, in development services, you have a lot of education and experience in this field, and you know, as council, we're generalists, and so we don't. So, but I do want to say, I think when I read through this, like Cal, I read through this a number of times trying to understand it, and I think a workshop would be key so that we're making decisions that are understandable for the general layperson, and then they can take that information and really understand it and apply it to their building. So that I just want to thank you for your work. It's just yeah, little hard for the layperson to absorb the full impacts. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Woodward. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Alex. Next up is bylaw tickets, right? Bylaw enforcement. Yeah. Development Service are proposing amendment to the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw to introduce additional ticket categories. Once again, you got a full list of changes, and we
Mayor,
have.
if I may, sorry, just a question. I don't know if anybody else is having the same problem, but my agenda is not the same. Like I have a different order on my agenda. Is it just me, or because I've logged out, logged back in a few times, it's still the same?
We did the bylaw number 3512 was the last one.
What's the number?
D. C is the zoning amending bylaw 3512. D is the bylaw enforcement amendment. That's the one we're on now. The last one we referred back to staff.
Okay.
Do you have a 9D?
So we're
9D.
What I've got in front of me here is the one we're on currently is Bylaw Enforcement Amendment 2020 Update, Bylaw 3514, Bylaw Tickets. That's what it says on my agenda.
It's 9D, and it should be the last one in the 9 categories.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
It's D, yes. You okay? Okay. All right, so the first, there's a recommendation here, or not, depending on council's will, that the Bylaw Notice Enforcement Amendment 2020 Update, Bylaw number 3514-2020 be introduced and read a first and second time by title only. Alex, did you want to give a bit of an overview on this one as well, just before we go any further? We did have a hand up to move it from Councillor Renwick, but second by Councillor Page. So Alex, you have the floor.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Mayor Dooley. So there's a bit of a housekeeping element to quite a bit of this here. I, as always, happy to entertain questions on specific, lines of it. The bulk of them, as you can see, pertain to the traffic bylaw. I think the two main instigators of these amendments was what I've seen in the RFD, that we don't really have a ticket at present for building a structure on city-owned property. And when you pour through all of our bylaws, I think a lot of people are surprised that the one bylaw that says you can't just build stuff on city property, it's the traffic bylaw. So without, completely deconstructing all the bylaws and rearranging them to maybe put it in a perhaps more logical place, it's fine for that regulation to remain in the traffic bylaw, but there should be some tickets attached with that because that is something that happens from time to time, that people build structures on city property without permission. By going through the traffic bylaw, I was working with the bylaw enforcement department, and we identified a number of offenses that are already listed by the traffic bylaw that don't have a ticket with them. So even though it's against the bylaw, there isn't a ticketing option for the bylaw officers to go and just issue a ticket for that specific thing at this point. So hence a lot of those there. And then secondly, the sort of other instigator of this was around these lot coverage and landscaping rules as well too. There's under the last section here under zoning, if council were to go forward tonight and want to pass third reading of these amendments, which could certainly, I think, still be recommendable by staff, because there's quite a bit in here that should go forward sooner than later from our perspective. Before passing third reading and during first and second reading, you'd want to probably strike off the one that says failure to maintain a green roof, because if that's not going to be part of the regulations right away at this point, at least, there's no point having it in there. The line item for failure to maintain conditions for lot coverage relaxation would still be relevant, even under the zoning bylaw as it stands now. So that would be my one comment on that, if council wants to proceed with this tonight.
Question, Councillor Morrison? And then Councillor Anderson and Councillor Page. I'm sorry, Councillor Page, it's hard to keep up with the screen, but you're on there.
So, my thoughts just here are regarding the zoning bylaw, and I realize that we've just now put aside, because it was the previous motion, all of that. I don't particularly have a problem with supporting this ticketing, because we have a number of zoning changes that we've made that we do as one-offs, and I actually don't see any problem with but I mean, I'm looking for staff for direction on that, of actually putting into the zoning bylaw a green roof plan, because I don't really, if the preceding stuff never goes through, I don't really care, but somebody might want to build a green roof, and if they let it go asunder, I'd like to be able to find them regardless of whether or not I change the zoning, that you got to have more lot density because you put in a green roof. So I'm kind of like, to me, that's almost like a good neighbor or unsightly premise bylaw, that if you have a green roof, regardless of how you went about getting it, that it needs to be maintained. So I would see that as a property maintenance issue. So I could support this going through. I just don't know how you're writing it, or is it staff's recommendation that we just pull out those zoning ones and just do this traffic amendment within this resolution?
Indeed, the wording would have to change because although the wording failure to maintain a green roof could stand, it's the fact that they all have to reference back to a specific section, and right now as it's written, it's referencing back to the lot coverage provisions, I'm sure, as you know. So I think my intuition on that would be to perhaps just, as I said before, we just strike it for now and move forward with the rest. And we have in development services a running list of things that we want to change here and there, and we could add that as an amendment for next round. Once we've worked through the zoning bylaw, and either perhaps in the end it'll look quite similar to what's on paper right now, and if not, to really have, and it's a good point that all the green roofs should be maintained, but that would actually require a kind of a new section somewhere else in the zoning bylaw or a property maintenance bylaw that says green roofs must be maintained to an acceptable standard, and then a ticket apply to that. And it might not even be in the zoning bylaw for that matter. So that is something that we should look at. I definitely agree, but perhaps not as part of this amendment here.
Further questions? Councillor Page was next, and then Councillor Anderson.
Actually, Councillor Morrison addressed my question,
Okay.
so I withdraw.
thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, I just don't understand what 79A is or how it is different from 80 in the traffic bylaw. So failure to obtain a permit for construction where the highway is occupied versus impeding traffic and damage to highways.
Sorry, so that was 79A and
79A, 83.
And,
Oh, sorry, and 80, yes.
And 80, so impeding traffic. Damage to highways. 79A is more specific. So failure to obtain a permit for construction where the highway is occupied, right? That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So that, right, it is sort of what it says when where you have construction workers. 80 is a lot more general because you can impede traffic or damage highways, I think, in other ways, you know, without having done something that may necessarily require a permit. Either way, even if, and I don't have the actual bylaw open in front of me, right? These are just the sort of captures here that are part of the ticketing. But even if they're quite substantially similar, without amending the traffic bylaw and reworking a lot of that, you'd want to have a ticket for both, and at least they're at the same, you know, if they're at the same cost here as well, right? Because otherwise, if someone's able to make the case, well, if perhaps I committed an offense under Section 80 and not 79A, if there wasn't a ticket item for Section 80, well, then they could wiggle their way out of the ticket.
Okay, thanks, Alex.
Yeah. So these are, just for clarity for all of us, these are amendments or addition to the existing bylaws that we have in place. So they're add-ons. As an example, you spoke on the previous item, Alex, about relaxation for, you know, lot coverage and so forth, and you have a piece in here that actually allows you to enforce the guy that paves his driveway that wasn't supposed to do it, which you talked about earlier. Yeah, and that's where you say
this wouldn't because without adopting those zoning amendments that we just talked about a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
This wouldn't have anything to do with that, the paving the driveway. If this fine were to go forward without the aforementioned zoning amendments, what this would actually speak to would be the only zoning bylaw relaxation that we have right now, which is that if you build a laneway house that's under 4.5 meters tall, so basically a single-story laneway house, you can get an extra 5%. But if you build a two-story one, you don't. So that's why I said I think that fine could stay as written for that reason. It would be odd for someone's laneway house to sort of organically grow above 4.5 meters in height, but if someone, I guess, built it up illegally, then that would be the fine that would apply.
Okay, thank you. All right, are we clear as mud here, everybody? So number one, we're voting on number one. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Before you go on, no, don't say carried.
Okay.
So
it does. Sorry, Councillor Morrison.
Like
Councillor Morrison, just a second. Give me a little bit of leeway here because it takes me time to find everybody on the screen. Okay, so when a hand goes up, I just can't react to it immediately. Okay, go ahead.
I think that the bylaw, we have to give the direction to the staff is that we want that we're approving this with the deletions recommended by staff or something like that. We have to throw that little tidbit in there because right now we're trying to pass a bylaw that still has all the stuff in on the stuff that we've asked to have referred back. So I'm good with passing this, but we have to amend this, and I don't know what parts need to be taken out, but amended based on the recommendations of staff.
Okay, so Sarah's got an option for us here. Thanks, Councillor Morrison.
So you've given first and second reading now, and you can amend it, so you can adopt third reading as amended to remove, and then Alex will have to insert the sections of the bylaw that need to be removed. Okay?
Okay, so everybody's voted on that one. We're clear on that, okay? Now we're moving to number two, the bylaw notice enforcement amendment. Bylaw number 3514, 2020 be read a third time by title only. So go ahead, Sarah.
As amended to remove, and then Alex, you'll have to identify which sections of this bylaw. I think it's just, if I understand correctly, number 6.
So, yeah, section 6, the first, how you want to identify the first row in the table in section 6.
Number 6,
Okay.
first row, okay.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, so in terms of the final bylaw you're adopting, we'll put that piece in that you're removing.
Right.
So it's
It's been read by title only. Okay, thank you very much. All in favor? Thanks very much. Thank you, Alex. Okay, next up is grants. FireSmart community funding. Nelson Fire and Rescue Services has applied for a grant in the amount of $146,000 to partner with BC Parks to conduct a wildfire fuel mitigation at 5 Mile water intake along the pipeline, as well as further support local FireSmart activities. As part of UBCM's grant application process, council resolution supporting these fuel mitigation efforts, the FireSmart activities, and the committee to overall grant management is required. So there's a full package of the granting application that took place, and there's a recommendation if somebody wishes to move the recommendation. Councillor Morrison's moving that whereas council supports the Nelson Fire and Rescue Service plans to continue with the important community FireSmart work and wildfire fuel reduction activities to reduce the risk and impact of wildfires. Therefore, it be resolved that the Nelson Fire and Rescue Service be authorized to apply for $150,000 in grant funding from the Union of BC Municipalities in 2021 Community Resilience Investment Program, and further that Nelson Fire and Rescue Service staff be responsible for the overall grant management. We have a mover and a seconder by Councillor Woodward, moved by Councillor Morrison. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Thank you very much. Next is a report from Sarah.
One more grant.
Oh, one more grant. Oops, sorry. UBCM grant, hold on till I get it back up here again.
Evacuation route planning.
Okay, the next one is, the next recommendation, sorry, is that Council, in November 23rd, the resolution regarding the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund grant application. Whereas Council supports the importance of implementing and developing the city's evacuation route plan in order to ensure efficient and safe evacuation routes for the movement of people from an area of imminent or actual threat to an area of safety. Therefore, be resolved that the Corporation of the City of Nelson be authorized to apply for $25,000 grant from the Union of BC Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund to support the development of evacuation route planning, and further that staff be responsible for the overall grant management. Moved by Councillor.
Just, there's a number 1 to rescind the November 23rd resolution.
Okay, so we're going to deal with number 1 first, and that is to rescind the November 23rd resolution. That was so Councillor Morrison, and second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? And then, thank you. And now, mover and a seconder for the second part, number 2. Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Renwick. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Next is Sarah's going to give us an overview here. Staff has anticipated, rightly or wrongly, there will be a local by-election in 2021. Accordingly, are providing council with the most up-to-date information regarding holding of a by-election during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the report is there. I don't know if you wanted to give us an overview of this, Sarah, or not.
If anyone has any questions,
It's there for information if anyone has any questions. Councillor Morrison?
I had a question under part 1 of the document there. Just what is, that the city would also need to request that the province approve the use of oral declarations, that this would greatly reduce touch points on election day. Oral declarations of what, residency? What, could you just explain that a bit more?
Yep, oral declarations of residency and that you are who you say you are. So when you go to vote, right, or prior to COVID, if you did not have the proper ID, you could sign a declaration saying that everything is truthful, that you are who you say you are and that you live where you say you live. Okay, and now we're asking council to approve oral declarations. I don't know if you voted during the provincial election. We had the opportunity to give out an oral declaration rather than signing the book. Okay, so there's just a few things to be mindful of with COVID and some of the changes that might be necessary should we have a by-election, and that is one of them. And we can send whatever council decides to do, whether it's mail-in ballots, which we currently do not do. We do not have that in our bylaw. Oral declarations are another one. And there is one more. Electronic transactions. Those are all things that can be considered and would go to the province for approval rather than making a change to our elections bylaw, which we do not have time to do.
So all this stuff's time sensitive because of the additional potential.
And it's just something that I wanted to bring to council's attention. If there should be a by-election, I will be coming to you for a resolution one way or another, whether or not you would like to include some of these things, whether I would go to the minister for approval.
Any further questions? Hearing none, onward and upward.
Mr. Mayor, I think what Sarah's asking for is council comfortable with those type of actions? People are comfortable with, right, the three things that Sarah talked about. You don't have to make that decision tonight. We don't have an official by-election yet, but she just is looking to prepare. So if people aren't interested in any of those things, she wouldn't do that work to understand what we need to do and what the timelines are. Obviously, I think the provincial government has to be, I'm not sure if they have to be sitting or what that is, but anyway, there's a bunch of work Sarah has to do if you're asking her to make sure all these precautions are taken into account.
So I was just going by what was on the paper here, Kevin, and that was received for information. So if you need action on those, Sarah, then fair enough. I think that's fair that you should research and make sure you're prepared, right? Councillor Morrison, you had a question.
The question is a comment in terms of what the CAO was saying. And I'm just sort of thinking that we're not the only jurisdiction in the province that's going to be in this position of having to potentially have a by-election. And I know that Sarah is probably very good at reaching out to those colleagues that she has in those jurisdictions to probably even as a group start raising what they're contemplating, because it all has to have ministerial assent to be able to go through with it. And hopefully what would be decided on would be something that would be hopefully utilized in every jurisdiction across the province, not just within the city of Nelson. I don't have a problem with any of the things that have been recommended, but I think that, testing, knowing that she can go ahead and at least start making those inquiries would be worthwhile.
Okay, Councillor Page.
Yeah, having looked them over, everything that I see on here seems like a conservative, pragmatic approach, and I don't have any concerns or complaints about how we might do some of these things over video, over oral, trying to remove some of those touch points. I think we're capturing the same essence of what those those protection measures are trying to accomplish anyway. So I don't see anything here that raises red flags as Sarah goes out and tries to develop best practices for this situation. That's my only comment.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Thank you very much, Councillor Page. Okay, Sarah, you got your marching orders. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, onward and upward. The next piece on the agenda is the organic diversion. The key word's diversion, of course. Council, in conjunction with the RDCK service. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I beg your pardon. The Climbing Association, Kootenay Climbing Association, sorry. On November 27, 2020, Kootenay Climbing Association presented to Council with regards to its efforts to advance the development of a new climbing facility in the city. They indicated that seeking direction from Council with regards to its location, study, Council referred the matter back to this meeting to provide formal direction to KCA with regard to the site selected for the location study. So there is a report in here. These folks have done a lot of work. I've got to hand it to them. But there is a recommendation from staff. And if somebody wishes to move the recommendation, moved by Councillor Page, second by Councillor Woodward, and that Council approves the Kootenay Climbing Association proposal.
Hold on, John. That's not what I'm moving.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
No worries. I'd like to move referral of this item to a meeting after March 2021.
Okay, you need a seconder. I'm assuming Councillor Woodward didn't have his hand up to second something he didn't know was coming. So Councillor Renwick's chosen to second your motion. All of a sudden I'm missing some people on the screen. So I'm not sure if anybody else is in. I don't see Rick, Councillor Lochtenberg.
He's there.
Yeah, it's just that if he puts his hand up, I can't see him. And I've got a feeling he might have his hand up for this particular issue.
You see me now?
We hear you all right, but not see you. Oh, there you are. Okay. So far we have a mover and a seconder to defer this to March 2021. Is that right, Councillor Page?
After March 2021 at staff's discretion.
So that'll be April or sometime.
It could be April 1st if that's what they want.
So after March 2021. Any questions or comments on that? Councillor Lochtenberg?
I'm sure Councillor Page has a good reason for going against the staff recommendation. I'd like to hear it before I ask any more questions.
Certainly. I'm moving referral this because I think we have reports coming in and workshops being done at Rec Commission on top of quite a lot on staff's plate that I think this will be better served if we deal with it in a number of months, once some of those reports have landed and some of those workshops have been conducted.
Councillor Lochtenberg, supplemental?
Yeah, well, so, you know, as somebody who also sits on the Rec Commission, I can say to the rest of council that it's, as we've said in the last workshop, this is not a place for the Rec Commission. It's something that the Rec Commission itself said they do not have any capacity to handle for till 2022, to look outside beyond the walls of the NDCC itself. If we do wait for the Rec Commission to do its workshop, which is extremely narrow in scope, would have no bearing on this project at all, we're just effectively delaying for no good reason. And I think what we've seen and heard from this group and from other groups, that they're getting frustrated with the bureaucracy of that just keeps moving the goalposts. And what they're asking is to do nothing more than study sites. That's it. So I thought we were pretty clear that was something reasonable and something we should do.
we have 3 speakers, starting with Councillor Renwick, Councillor Woodward, and Councillor Morrison.
Mayor. You know, Rick, I agree. However, with what's coming down the pipe and some of these studies that are going on, I struggle with sending guys out there to go and do homework on these sites when they're going to hit these, for example, Campbell Field. That report hasn't come back yet, and it's due in a couple of months. You know, and the climbing people have said to us very clearly that they're looking for something in 3 to 5 years. So, you know, by delaying this, sort of delaying this, if you will, for 3 months, I don't think in the grand scheme of things is that big a deal. I like I say, I hate to send them out there on a wild goose chase. That's all.
Councillor Woodward, and then Councillor Morrison.
So thank you, Mayor. My concern is with number 1, COVID response and staff time. Number 2, the by-election, which is coming up, and I guess I'm a little concerned about does staff have the capacity at this moment to deal with this? I would hate to overload staff for something that is a 3 to 5 year plan when we have quite a bit, as Councillor Renwick said, in the next couple of months here. It seems like there's a lot going on. So that's just my concern. I'm a little worried for staff being overloaded. But I mean, they have given a recommendation here, but I just don't exactly know where staff is in terms of total workload.
Thank you. Well, they're busy, believe me. Councillor Morrison?
Somewhat on the same vein as Councillor Woodward and Councillor Renwick. I'm very concerned here in terms of I know the argument would be placed that they're willing to, and I it's not like I haven't listened to the Kootenay climbing group make presentations at several meetings I've been at now. As I look back and I see their cube presentation that I've got a copy of sitting here on my desk, it's that the majority of these facilities that they're looking at here are City of Nelson facilities. And as much as a group might be able to go and do a location study, they're going to be asking questions about our properties. And in that regard, it does take our staff time. And it's not like it's, okay, well, staff only have to give them 2 hours on Tuesday. It doesn't probably really work like that when you're looking at multiple sites throughout the area and needing to have building tours and to really understand conceptually some of the buildings, particularly if you were going to go and look at putting this in the old barn, and along with that is that they need to be having their discussions with the people at Campbell Field. So I'm comfortable with seeing this put off for a bit. We've got so many balls in the air. There's so many things going on. I would like to see this put off a little bit, and that they can probably actually start their public consultation anytime they want, this group. But I think that asking to utilize staff time, which is inevitable in these projects, is asking for too much right now.
There's a couple of things here. If you read through the recommendation, and I agree with much of what's being said. However, anytime you have a community group that comes forward with the ability to fund the development with no financial cost to the City of Nelson, we should create a position for them that they have some hope that they can move forward with something. We had a very similar situation with the Nelson Minor Baseball on Lions Park and on Queenie Park, and they moved forward. They funded, for the most part, funded the redevelopment of both those parks. And yes, once it got going, it did take some of the City of Nelson staff time, but just to get them to the point of the development, they were able to do almost 100% of that themselves. And maybe we can give these folks some work to do, and potentially, as you just said, Councillor Morrison, do the public consultation piece. Maybe they'll learn more from outside their initial group about locations than what they've learned from within their group, or even by speaking to myself or any other member of council here. So I would like to, if possible, to send them off without sort of scuttling their ship till the end of March, which could be God knows when after that. Send them off with a chore, because clearly they're excited and ambitious, and they're bringing money to the table, which is a rare occasion in our situation. So, is there any part of this resolution that council feels they could support?
Can I just speak to staff side of it? If that's the real concern. If it's something else, then fair enough. You know, I get the Campbell Field piece.
Yeah.
If you want,
yeah.
if this is about staff, you know, we have our priorities, and we will make sure those happen. We're not suggesting this would upset other priorities. And hamstringing us to a certain date. If we have capacity in January, or February, or March, I don't see why we wouldn't proceed. You know, I'm there fairly, Peter's, since that, has toured them through most of these facilities already. So, like I said, I think you'd have to, you know, trust staff that we're going to schedule this in where it works, not you know, putting it in front of another project that's already underway. And that may take us to March, it may take us to January. So I would suggest that if that is really the concern, then you need the latitude with staff to figure out when we could do this. At the top, I don't see this as a big thing, but I'd have to talk to Peter and make sure that where he's at, and because I think he's the person that would be most affected. I think this is it's a group that actually has architects and people with building experience on their group, so it's not like working with a group that's that doesn't have that skill set. I think the city has had a long tradition of working with people that have vision and momentum. We just delivered the disc golf up at Rosemont Park, and that was a group that was excited about a project, said they would come to the table, do all that work. Did that take some staff time? Yes. The Lions, and I meant the wife will kill me for this. She's the president of the club. The Rotary up at Rosemont Park again. That group really ran with that, and yes, we supported them. So I think we've had a long tradition of really working with people that have some, strong people behind them, and every time you send them back, and I guess in terms of 3 to 5 years, I think that's a constructed facility. That's not to start it. I think every 6 months you delay, then they haven't applied for a grant. They can't apply for a grant because they don't have a location. So when they talk 3 to 5 years, that's a constructed, open facility, and every time you delay that, you're adding that much more time onto that time frame. So just to clarify those couple things.
Yeah, this is like this is a growing sport, and they've recognized that the opportunity here to continue to grow that sport, and I think it's part of the fiber of this community. Councillor Page.
For me, this one is more of a cart before the horse governance question. I will just take a moment to make a small record correction on what the board of the RDCK passed at its most recent meeting. It passed 3 resolutions, of which 2 of them commission picked up. I won't go through all 3, but one that speaks specifically to a point that was made earlier, that there's no place for these discussions in that area where we do deal with rec at Rec Commission. The board directed staff to develop a terms of reference for the Nelson and Area Recreation Commission that will include, but not be limited to, the roles and responsibilities of the commission as it pertains to recreational service delivery in the area and how new initiatives are received and reviewed by commission. That was put there on top of supporting the motion to do a workshop with the commissioners and figure out what to be doing in terms of in terms of the objectives and recommendations from the existing master planning, which is something we are taking on, as well as reviewing and potentially repealing the recreational bylaw to be informed by those workshops. And so with the Campbell Field, with the workshop coming up, while there may be some discussion around some commissioners of going one way or another, the board itself is sending us with direction to figure this kind of stuff out. And with the timelines and all the other projects and balls that are up in the air, I think it's actually quite prudent, quite appropriate, and the correct way to be working through that governance process. I feel for this group. I've said this before, because I think even the way it's at this meeting, we didn't have a strong referral at our cow to send this to this meeting. We had, again, a couple advocates who wanted to see it at this meeting, but we didn't really follow tight process or vote to refer this over here. I think we have too many chefs in the kitchen, and it's making this whole thing murkier and muddier than it needs to be. And that is why I'm saying we need to put this out and let some of these balls land properly and then move on.
Councillor Lochtenberg, sorry, I can't see you, so I'm not sure if you're...
I totally agree. There are too many chefs in the kitchen, which is why this should not be at Rec Commission. It's why Rec Commission does not have the capacity to deal with it, as much as, through the chair, Councillor Page would like this to be at Rec Commission. Rec Commission, and I think staff, don't want it there. It's not within their scope. It's beyond their ability to deal with it. What the staff, our staff have recommended, if we want to have just one chef in the kitchen, so to say, and it's our staff has given us their recommendation. And so I would just go with that and recognize they've already missed one grant window. They're going to miss another grant window. They would love to get moving in this year, because as the CEO has said, if this thing's ever going to open, it requires a couple things. Number one, the grants that are available now and won't be much longer as funding windows start to shut down with COVID. Number two, it's momentum. These are volunteers that have been struggling and pulling this through and getting, as we heard at the workshop, pushed back and forth between different groups. So I just fear that if we send them back again and say, oh, just delay again, miss another grant window, it's never going to make it, and they'll just lose steam. So I just go with really encourage we just go with staff recommendation on this one.
We called the question.
I just wanted to give a little bit of historical context to this, and I'll just quickly run through, and I could make a much longer list, but I'll just quickly run through a few things. The Climbing Association, they actually, driven by themselves, created their facility they have now, which is up at Selkirk College, and that didn't cost a penny to put that in. In our case, in the municipality, we built our soccer fields ourselves. That was driven by passion from a number of people within the sports community, not only from soccer, but slow pitch and rugby, etc. Hockey, the same thing. Those facilities were driven from within Nelson. The Capitol Theatre restoration was driven from within Nelson. The tramway that we have on the waterfront was driven by people within Nelson, without the Rec Commission being involved in that either. The waterfront pathway, these are all projects that were driven by people with passion within our community. The skate park, and most recently Queen Elizabeth and Lions Park baseball diamonds. These are projects that were brought forward by exactly the same type of people that are bringing forward the building of a new climbing wall. And if we don't give people like this some opportunity to see that there's potential for them to move other projects forward, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where we'll have very few people coming forward to this group to move projects forward. I think there's an opportunity here for council to give some leeway and listen to what was said by around the table, absolutely, about staff load, etc. And I'm struggling with the end of March piece, but beyond that, I really think we need to give this group an opportunity. Give them an opportunity to fail, if you wish. I don't think they will. I happen to think that they've got a strong group of people with a growing number of people in this sport. And I can say to you from somebody that's attended, not as a climber, but has visited their facility up at this college, it crosses gender and age groups from age 5 to 55. And it's a wonderful facility, and these folks are determined to do something. And I don't hear staff saying they can't accommodate them, at least answer the phone once in a while. But I really believe council should give them some flavour that there's an opportunity for them to be successful. Or as I say, let them fail. I don't think they will. I believe they'll surprise us. So having said that, we have a motion on the floor. And the motion reads, Sarah?
That's, the request from the Kootenay Climbing Association is deferred until after March 2021.
So Councillor Page's motion is that the Kootenay Climbing Association request be deferred until after March 2021. We don't even have a date on when it could come back, but after March 2021. And that was moved and seconded. And any further comments? Councillor Morrison?
Just after listening to you speak, Mayor Dooley, I'm wondering why this motion is actually even in front of us in terms of why council would need to even approving a location study for this group. Now I'm confused as to why it's even in front of us, because many groups have come forward. I don't know what, so they happen to be looking at some of our properties.
Right.
They're also looking at Campbell Field. They're also, Mary Hall is also our property, but I'm not too sure why we have to, why we would be giving approval.
So they're looking at some of our properties, yes, and I think that's probably why. And the motion reads, and further that council generally supports the Kootenay Climbing Association in its effort to develop a new indoor climbing facility in the city of Nelson, subject to the following conditions: completion of a local study, location study, completion of a robust public consultation process following the location study, and the ability to fund the development with no financial commitment to the city. So I get, because they're looking at some of our buildings, they're going to need to speak with Peter Stenstad and
So subsequent to that when I even look at the list though of even what they need to do, is I think that they need to have a robust public consultation before they actually go too far down the road of location. When I see this in this order, it's worrisome to me that, you know, it'll be location X, and then I don't know just exactly what the public consultation is then, because the spot's already been picked. I think that the cart's in front of the horse in that regard. I think the public consultation needs to take place, not the location picked, because if I was looking at those locations that are listed up there, I know which one I'd want to pick, and I'd make sure that my location study indicated that that was the one. And then I'd be going out to the public to say, we want to put it in X. Does everybody think that's okay?
Yeah. And Councillor Morrison, I'll just stop you for a second, please. And I think, you know, I agree with what you're saying to a point, and you're welcome, should we approve the motion that's on the table or deny it, you're welcome to bring something back beyond that if you wish. So right now we have that motion. I'd like us to vote on it because I think we've had enough discussion. All in favour of Councillor Page's motion? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay, it passes. Okay, so it's deferred till after March.
Thank you, guys.
Next up is the organics diversion. Council, in conjunction with the Regional District of Central Kootenay Service Partners, has set a goal to divert organics from the landfill to reduce greenhouse gases and to extend the life of the landfill. Council is also in the process of adopting its climate change plan, which includes some of the most ambitious climate change targets in Canada. Part of this strategy includes organics diversion. And there is a recommendation from staff that Council approve the residential pre-treatment organics diversion program as presented, and further direct staff to apply under the Clean BC program to implement the pre-treatment residential curbside collection program, development of a pilot program, commercial, industrial sector to pre-treat their organic food waste. So there's a staff recommendation there if somebody wishes to move it. Moved by Councillor Woodward. Seconded by Councillor Renwick. Any questions or comments? Councillor Morrison?
Okay, I just have a couple. So hopefully these recommendations, we can move them as two separate ones, because just to be upfront, what I'm missing here, which is what I've been feeling the pressure coming from the regional district as, is I don't see us anywhere in this recommendation saying that we will be using the site in Central, so that we'll be using the new facility that they want to build, which is what they've been asking us for the last while. So I don't clearly see that as a one-line statement that we can send to them to say that that they should go ahead with the building and designing of the facility there. But more so the fact that I don't think at this time that it's particularly important, nor should we be jumping into looking at developing a pilot for the institutional, commercial, and industrial sector. I think that's something that we could consider at a later date, or in a separate resolution, or as part of options that they could consider. I think that we should be leaving it to the regional district and to the provincial government to figure out what's going to happen with ICI, at least at this time. I don't see that we should be, again, encumbering staff with also doing that that development. So I would like to see 1 and 2 be well, I mean, we need 2A, but the 2B part, I would even be happy to see that just struck before we vote.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder.
Can I answer number one? First one. So the reason there's not a separate resolution on using the central site is council's already made that decision. So you passed that resolution back in 2019, I believe. All we're doing here is saying it would be through would pre-treat our food waste at the residential side. So that's the difference. Instead of collecting it wet, we'd collect it as pre-treated and not truck that water around. So so the resolution's already on the table. So we would be looking at a curbside collection. That's the Clean BC is for curbside collection. So we would, so council's already made a decision on curbside.
I don't think that's clear to the regional district.
Okay, well, we can share
The
that.
regional district, or they wouldn't have been writing us all those letters. I mean, let's be honest. I mean,
if you want to pass it separately, I'm just saying the resolution's already there. What you passed was that you would participate in the curbside collection, but you would offer alternatives. So we're not changing that you'd participate in the curbside collection. All we're doing is pre-treating it before we collect it. Some people will, as they would have before, some people would have composted in their backyards. Some people still will compost in their backyards. What we're changing here is they were expecting us to collect it wet. And what you're saying, what we're recommending as staff is based on the results we've had and the fact that the GHGs that you're saving the cost, all those things favor pre-treating that before it's collected at the curbside.
So Kevin, just a second. So Janice, you're more than welcome to add that as part of this, as a separate resolution if you wish, and subject to, if you wish, that'll be up to the mover and the seconder if they feel comfortable that that could be added. So there's clarity on that piece if that's important to you.
Yeah, you can reaffirm that
Yeah.
to participate in the website for the central compost facility if you want to add that again. But that's the reason why we didn't add it again.
Sorry, Kevin. Kevin, it's a little hard. I don't know about everybody else, but it's a little hard to hear you. We got the drift of what you're saying. Jesse?
Just to kind of paint this picture, that Nelson is part of the program, but that the food cycler will reduce our materials to with no water, and so we'll still be adding to the full system, but we're going to collect it differently than other parts of the compost collection. I'm just trying to paint this picture here clearly for everyone here and anybody in the audience.
Yeah. So we had that presentation, Jesse, and it was a smaller can, less 8 trips a year, I believe, Kevin, and the product was reduced when it went to the landfill. So it reduced the cost to the taxpayer. It dramatically reduced the greenhouse gas emissions from trucking. It eliminated us buying a separate new vehicle to actually do the job in the first place. And it also put us in a position where we can include yard waste and so on. If we do the collections at certain times of the year, we'd have spring cleanup, fall cleanup, Christmas tree cleanup, and we would add it to the same collection system.
Right. So still part of the RD program.
Right.
But the product we're shipping will be a dried product essentially.
Less volume. Right.
That's fine. Okay. I just wanted to paint that picture. That's all.
Yeah. Yep. So Janice, if you wanted to, just before I get to you, Cal, Janice, would you want to put a supplemental in there then?
I think that there needs to be a supplemental in there in regards to that, because I think that there's been, I've been sitting there, Councillor Anderson has sat at the table, and I don't think that the regional district has ever felt that we were going to participate. So I think that we need to be clear in that statement, because what we sent them was that, yes, that we were interested in participating. I have a copy of the letter, and because we had the reasons, and then we also had our conditions. Now, all of the conditions haven't been met. I don't think that they should be dropped from further discussions, because I think they're important considerations. I think we need to continue to pursue them. A lot of them are related to the servicing of the program, actually, not so much as participation. Things like having the separate service, or at least having the accountability of seeing that this actually truly becomes a user pay service, that we're not paying for it heavily through taxation. I think there's a number of things there that still have to be worked out, so it's not like we're giving them carte blanche at the regional district, but I think we need to be clear that yes, we're going to participate, and that we also expect to continue to work on those issues that were vital to us. And that was a letter that we sent and that we all approved as this current council that went forward in May of 2019 to the regional district.
Right. So would a supplemental work for the mover and the seconder to include that commitment to delivering the product to the Kevin, did you have something you want to say?
Well, I think Councillor Morrison asked for 2 things. One, that B be split off. So that would be the first thing, to split that resolution to consider item B separately, and then to just reaffirm that the city would participate in the central compost facility, including the conditions that were previously communicated.
Okay. So would that be okay with the mover and seconder if that supplemental was put in there? So D would be taken off at this point in time.
B.
Sorry? B, I beg your pardon. B. That's the industrial side, and that there be a commitment that the regional district would be notified that we would be participating in the organics diversion to their site.
Including based on the conditions that council had previously
Right.
Submitted.
I think at this point, I think that we've already submitted the letter with the conditions, so I don't think we need to re-include that in here. But I do think that we want to just make it really clear, like we are participating, because if you say plus all of those conditions, it doesn't make it actually clear that we're participating. And the deadline's already, our regional partners gave us a deadline by December 1st, and now they're meeting in 2 days. It gives staff less than one full working day to sort of pull this all together to be able to provide the recommendation to the Joint Resource Recovery Committee, because if we're not participating, they're not going to size the site sufficiently in order for us to participate. So if it's at a later date and we do have or we are going to participate, there are going to be these volumes that we're not super clear right now. I think that that's where some of the back and forth and confusion between staff and it not being really clear. I think we need to be super specific. The regional district or the city of Nelson will be participating in the regional organics
Diversion
program.
Yeah. So we still have those conditions on the table though. So council knows that would.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, so when I mentioned those conditions, it wasn't that I need them recited. It's just the fact that my intention is, and the intention I've had with talking with their staff there, is that those are still very important issues, but they're not issues that sort of drive whether or not we actually participate. So it's not that they need to be listed again. Councillor Anderson is right. It's just that I will be continuing with those issues because sometimes you look at these things and you kind of go, well, they didn't meet any of what we said that we would do to participate, but I think we're trying to move towards that. We've got some discussion happening about looking at rural collection. I heard this morning that there is some position that we're going to be breaking out all of the subsectors now within central waste into discrete pockets so that we can look at the costing of each one. So I'm hoping then that, organics diversion gets its own 10-page spreadsheet and there's nothing about recycling in it. So, we can only continue to try to have these discussions to make sure these things move forward. They do not need to be reiterated again, but we need to be clear in our statement in the first part of the recommendation that we are going to participate.
I would just, if that's the decision of council to have flexibility in there, I think you need to actually make that a decision, because that's not what is currently on the table. There are conditions you must. So I don't know if you want to do that tonight. I agree with Councillor Anderson and Morrison that the main thing is they want to move forward with their design and they need to know our volumes, which, as you saw from the report, I don't think our volumes are going to impact the sizing of this at all, but they certainly need to know that.
And I think that was the question that they really wanted answered was, and I think that they were basing it on curbside collection. And again, we are looking at a version of curbside collection. So I think that we are willing and wanting to be involved in it. Twofold though. One was, yes, we plan to be involved with providing feedstock, because that's the biggest question, because they want to decide on what size they want. They need to be aware that it's not at the volume that they've just thought that they were going to do. So that's a calculation that they'll have to do on their end. But that's the kind of the question was, will we be providing feedstock? That's what they wanted to know, because they want to be able to make the decision on the grant and whether or not what size of a facility they need to build.
Yeah, sorry. That's my question is, yes, we're part of the program. It's just the feedstock is a different form, but we're still part of the program.
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay, that's what I just want to make sure.
That's assuming council passes the resolution. Yeah.
So you can add that piece if you want to keep it clean. Yeah, yes, that we all participate. That council will, provide feedstock based on well, the first resolution with the clarification that we will participate in the central compost.
Yeah. I think that's a really important piece there, is that we will participate, but our feedstock is not going to be a wet compost. It's going to be a dry feedstock. I mean, that's a technical piece, but that we are participating is
Right,
just
that's
a
all.
different-
That's all they need to know. Is
That's
we
all
want
that
to
I think is
participate. Yeah.
important here.
Yeah, and they'll need to know eventually what the volumes are as well, so they can size their site. Okay, so back to square one. Did Councillor Renwick? Yes, I'm sorry, you had your hand up a couple of times. I beg your pardon.
Yeah, thank you. No problem out here in the RD, John. I'm going to disagree with my friend, the birthday girl there, Ms. Morrison, about B. I would really, I think we should run a pilot for the institutional, commercial, industrial. You know, these people get to pay double the taxes that a residential person pays. No garbage pickup, no recycling.
Can I just a point of order, Cal?
Yeah.
Well, Janice just separated those two, so you'll have that debate on
Yeah.
ICI after this resolution.
Yeah, so that'll be separate.
Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that's separated out, Cal, and so now we're dealing with Sarah.
We are dealing with,
And you had no supplemental there, Janice?
I just wanted Cal to know, it wasn't like I'm saying that we shouldn't do it, but it's more a cautious tale, and I don't think they should be linked together, that's all.
Yeah, okay. All right, so your supplemental, Janice, was that this resolution, should it pass, should include direction to the regional district that we will be participating in the organic diversion program, right? And that's okay with the mover and seconder? Okay, good. Sarah?
so can it say approve, that council approve the residential organics diversion program? Or the city's participation?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say in the central compost facility, it's not a residential program, it's ICI and
Oh, right, yeah.
residential.
Yeah.
In the ICI?
No, in the central composting, just central composting facility. Yeah.
Facility, okay.
Okay. All in favor?
No, I want Sarah to read it out again, just because I've gotten parts of it, but I don't know what it all looks like altogether.
And I have a question.
Okay, was it?
I just dropped it, sorry.
Sorry,
Dropped everything.
Sarah just dropped our notebook.
Oh, no,
okay.
sorry.
So bear with us here a little bit. Sarah's like a one-armed paper hanger here. Honestly, you can't see her, but she's managing at least 2 computers and trying to keep
Just to be
everybody in
clear.
line, as well as myself.
Just to be clear, it's number 1 and then 2A with the supplemental that we participate in the central compost organics diversion program.
Okay, so Kevin, it reads that council approved the residential pre-treatment organics diversion program as presented, and further directs staff to apply
Under the
Clean BC program to implement a pre-treatment residential curbside collection
Program.
program,
And that the City of Nelson will
Further.
participate.
and further that the
And further, that the City of Nelson will participate in the regional, the central Kootenay, the central waste organics diversion, organics diversion program.
Wouldn't we want that we're telling them that shouldn't that be the very first piece, that the City of Nelson is going to participate in the regional composting program, period? And further, that council approve the residential pre-treatment of organics diversion program as presented. And further, direct staff to apply under the Clean BC program to implement a pre-treatment residential curbside collection program.
Absolutely, you can do it either way. If that sounds better and feels better, then let's do it that way. Does that sound okay with you?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering.
That's fair.
Gabe, do you have that?
Yes, I've been following and I've got it down.
Okay.
Okay,
Councillor
all in
Page
favor?
has a question. Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Page had a question. Sorry.
No,
Sorry.
I think, no, he's okay. He said he was fine. He waved us off. He said he was fine.
Didn't.
Oh, you didn't? I'm sorry. I'm
I
sorry,
have a
Keith.
question. The only language I think that might be missing is whether or not we're committing 100% of the feedstock that we're collecting. Like does there need to be some language that you may not know the volume, but that it's going to be everything we collect, 75%? Are we going to do other things with this feedstock? Like if we participate and they're expecting on feedstock and we take half of it and put it in parks, what's the problem?
I think the first thing
I don't think the volume, their sizing of the facility, I don't think is going to depend on whether it's 50%, 75%, or 25%. And, you know, the two pilots showed that the first pilot, I think, did about 70% because it's in their own gardens. We went in the winter. I suspect that people in the winter might.
I can't hear you, Kevin.
So Kevin, it's really difficult to hear you, but I'll just give you a drift of what Kevin was saying. He said, Kevin's basically said that they're going to size the project regardless of what our volumes are at this point in time, and we still would retain the option if we needed some of that feedstock for our own use, as an example, ground cover or in our parks or whatever. But for the most part, most of it would go through to the central waste facility. At the end of the day, it's about organics diversion. It's not about creating organics either, right? The ideal situation in any kind of a waste program is reduction. And if we can have no organics, no waste, we're doing the right thing. Because not out this council, but some members of this council passed resolutions for zero waste, not only here, but also at the regional district. So it's about diversion of organics or waste in general. So if we have use for some of it, then we should use it. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, no, Mayor, I absolutely agree with you on that, you know, the goal should be zero waste, but I just think it's also important that that we're just really clear, because staff do need to know how much material we're going to be providing them so that they can size the facility. And right now, because they've already gotten their agendas for the joint resource recovery, and they assumed that because we had not responded to them that we were not participating, the recommendation from staff is actually, I believe, to reduce the size of the facility, because the city of Nelson, which is the largest volume, of course, in this region, that we were not participating. So it does matter if we participate or not, because it changes the sizing of it, which then has implications down the road. You know, if we are, you know, we're already going to be, I mean, we're paying for a large portion of this composting facility, right, through our taxation. And so, you know, a lot of it's grant funded, but there's also, of course, a significant piece that we're, the city of Nelson taxpayers, are funding. And so we just want to be clear how much feedstock we're anticipating so that the site is sized accordingly. But I also did have some questions I'm just trying to pull up since my iPad has now gone back to sleep. Let me just, sorry, bear with me, please. So I just wanted to be clear, did we show staff this program, and will it actually work with their regional system?
Yeah, so we did share the report that you received with their staff. They were notified that they could be part of the presentation on that, because we don't know who actually participates. We're not clear whether they did or not. And that same question of whether this feedstock is good for the product they're making. The food cycler person had that, you know, they have this all across the country. It's very good material for, it has, I forget what he said, the right stuff in it that would support a good compost end product.
Yeah, so just so Kevin's still a little bit murky there, but they were invited to the workshop that we had, Councillor Anderson, and notified accordingly. And as Kevin said, he's not 100% sure. And the other piece of that was that, yes, the product that would be produced in the city of Nelson would be compatible with what they're doing at the regional district. And going forward tonight, should council decide to pass this resolution, I'm quite sure that Kevin, along with Janice, and will be letting them know just exactly, you know, if they have any questions, that we'll be more than happy to answer them going forward.
Okay, and so just thanks. I just have a few more questions. So, are we going to be hauling this material to Groman or to Central?
My understanding is they are creating a drop-off location at Central. Was always part of their program because self-haul is still until they, well, I think either way, if they collect in the rural area, they're going to need some place to drop that off. And even out your way, seems to me it would make sense to bring it here to Groman as you're at least going the right direction towards where it's going to end up, and you're going back to the Shenya, probably wouldn't make a lot of sense. So I think they've always anticipated creating a drop off both for self-haul and for curbside. And I haven't heard anything that they said they had changed that. That was what they had proposed from the beginning.
Okay, and then I also saw in the report that there was a drop-off location for this material. Where are we going to be locating that?
So right now, that's a temporary thing at this stage. It's, I guess, a bit of a pilot right now for the current users. So that's down, is located down at the current Lakeside Drive location. So we've located that on city land beside, I think, just before you drive into that area, there will be a lot container there that current folks, if they want to get rid of that material until there's a curbside program, can drop off there.
Okay, so then between collections, we're not going to be providing anywhere for people to drop it off. So if people live in small places or small apartments, they're not going to have any access to drop off. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. We're going to see how this pilot works. I know our the food cycler folks thought that even your grocery stores, etc., might be a good service for them to have a collection site at their grocery store. So I think we have the flexibility to vary the number of collections, have some drop-off sites. So we'll look at all those things as part of the program and meet the needs of the community.
Okay, yeah, because just my concern with the drop-off locations, just like we see, at unstaffed recycling sites, that garbage tends to attract garbage. And if people know it's a site that they can drop off one type of waste, they'll tend to potentially drop off other kinds of waste, regardless of if it is the appropriate type of waste. So we just want to make sure that it's staffed and that we're controlling the material that goes in it. Otherwise, all of that material could end up contaminated. And of course, we don't want that going into a.
That's a great point, Councillor. And so one of the things that we've done is where it is going to be placed is at the front entrance to where public works vehicles go in. There are cameras that are on location. There is a lock on the particular drive, and you need to have the open up the container to put your soil material into it. So it is not going to be something you can just open up willy-nilly and throw it. Is it possible if someone throws their garbage bag there? Yeah, it's possible. But the idea is there's a large sign. It says for soil amendment only. Again, like I said, it's got cameras. And number two, you have to have a lock. You have to have the lock to be able to even drop off your material.
Okay, but that's not going to work when we have a full program for the entire city, correct?
Yeah, well, but again, this is what, as the CAO Cormac said, this is for the group that we right now have the pilot, because we have approximately 250. We know that there's only a small percentage of people that are maybe in apartments or in condos that don't have the ability to use the soil amendment in their own property. That's what the majority of people are doing. The buckets are there, they will be monitored, and if we need to drop that off. When we roll out and we were to be able to do this program, which again, as we noted in the report, likely wouldn't really even be getting geared up until sometime into the fall, that's when we need to have, what are we going to do? We have talked with Public Works in the sense that if we're doing leaf cleanup and those sorts of things, we take it and compost it up at the cemetery. And so we likely would need to have a pickup, at the same time we go with this full program, that's when we need to start having one of these 8 a year pickups starting, so that we've got people that have done soil amendment for a month or whatever it is, and then we would come and pick it up on the curbside, and we will take it as that point in time, because we do not believe, or our understanding is that the central waste facility may not be operational, and in fact, they may not want to start composting until spring of 2022. So we want to be able to have a place to take it and mix it with our leaves and have a product that, as Councillor Page said, maybe go onto our soccer fields or whatnot, or into our parks. So with that being the plan, so that we've got a bit of time to get there, and that would definitely be a case where we would be doing an actual pickup when we get to the stage of a full rollout to homes based on the recycler.
Sorry, Colin, you were a little bit hard to hear at that last bit. Okay, thank you. I do appreciate that. And we've figured out they're recyclable, these units, because I think they have a 5 or 7 year life cycle to them. So is that they'll be being dropped off at the leaves depot? Is that correct?
So the food sector in their presentation, Councillor Anderson. I know you have a copy of the presentation itself, but the gaps that were filled in during the workshop you weren't privy to. So in that, they're going to set up a place in Nelson for repairs. They have a local technician that's contacted them already that wants to be their center to drop off any units that are in need of repair, and they believe most of them can be repurposed and recycled back out into the stream of composting, or whatever you want to call it. And they're trying to look on a program, for instance, where you bring your unit in and they would give you another one, and then they'd replace it with the one that they repaired, or so on. If it's unrepairable, it'll go directly, just like your cell phone would or your television would, it would go to the recycling depot.
Okay, so and then when they're repairing it, is that free to the resident, or is that at an additional cost to the resident?
That's a question now I don't know the answer to that. I'll leave that to Kevin. Kevin, what's the conversation been there? I imagine it'd be like your dishwasher or anything else. You'd have to.
So the program would, as you saw from the presentation, we'd be charging an annual fee for that food cycler to recover the cost of it over the 5 years. We would build in, an allowance for repairs and that piece of it. So we would take that into account. And also, as part of the presentation, you saw that, the filters, how many filters someone would use can vary quite a bit, from those that keep it out in their shed that use 0 to those that are quite finicky about smelling their house and want it in their house that may use a bit more. So they're looking at
partnership with Can Filters.
And reusing that, having a reusable filter. So we think between the filter costs and the repair costs, there's enough allowance in there to be able to factor the repairs. And right now we've had virtually no issues with any of the food cyclers. The one that we had that got repaired it came as with no power on it, and the local repair guy got it back and running within an hour or so. So it has a pretty good track record so far, and we've had it for a couple of years now here at City Hall, and they've had them for, I think, 4 or 5 years out in the general public. So they seem to be fairly durable, but it's fair enough that once you have that many out there, you're going to run into some of those things. But they're certainly looking to work with us around that.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Any further questions? Hearing none.
Mayor, could I ask a question through the chair?
Yes.
So I was just wondering, Councillor Anderson, you seem, your comment about the RFD going to the RDCK and that they, they don't have us included, so they don't know about our feedstock. We did invite them to the presentation. Do you have any information whether or not they decided that they couldn't make it, or I believe it's even streamed. You can watch it again if you want. Maybe I'll ask Corporate Officer Winton if that's correct, but my understanding, if that's the case, so a bit surprised that they would be putting out an RFD that says they don't know anything that we're doing if they, decided not to attend, because we did invite them to the presentation.
Oh, Janice has her hand up. Janice, I'll tell you what I'm going to do here, if you don't mind. Let's get to the vote, and we'll get this moved one way or the other, and then we'll fill in some of those details for Colin. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Okay, Janice, did you want to answer that question, if you don't mind?
Just going to answer that question because unfortunately I didn't see it right away, but I did receive an email from Uli Wolf, their General Manager of Environmental Services, and I believe it was also addressed to Kevin, because I saw a response from Kevin that he did watch the streaming of that last presentation. So I know that that he watched that, and I know that previous. I want to say there was a previous discussion, because I talked with Amy Wilson, who's also one of their managers of environmental services, and she had referenced having watched part of I guess the previous council meeting that she had seen streamed. So yes, they've been participating remotely or looking at it after the fact, because it is streamed and can be reviewed.
Okay, thank you. So now we're onward and upward, and we're on now to B, which was the development of a institutional, commercial, industrial sector pre-treatment organic food waste. And Councillor Renwick, you wanted to move this forward, did you?
Mr. Mayor, maybe
just a moment, Kevin, because this wasn't in the original motion, so
yeah,
it was
Yes, I would, but I'd be interested to hear what CEO Cormac has.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Cal. Kevin?
I'll second that.
Kevin?
Okay, I just wanted to let you know the reason why we were looking at this pilot is, again, at the presentation, Food Cycler folks did say they it's not their product, but they are a rep for another commercial company for this, and they will make one available. They have a demo back right at this moment that they've had out in other locations, and they will lend it to us at no cost for 6 months. So that really is why we just see opportunity to do this. We also see there might be a bit of a social enterprise with the youth center. We could locate it there. It would be central. Maybe their students could, their staff could go around and collect and just see how that works, from that. Because we're not going to be able to locate one of these in every, we're going to have a few locations around the city, I suspect, and people are going to have to bring it to that central site. And I know we have another vendor that's we've had some preliminary discussions with, so it just seemed it made sense, and I think it also is important for the RD to know on the commercial side or the ICI side whether we'll be delivering wet feedstock or pre-treated feedstock.
Yeah, so hopefully everybody got that. Food Sector has a demo machine that they'll make available to us at no cost to run a pilot program. So Cal, did you want to speak to that again? And then Councillor Lochtenberg. But if you have a motion, that's better, so we can move on or move.
I'm seconding Cal's motion.
Yeah, okay. So it's moved and seconded that we go ahead with the development of a pilot program for the industrial side. Any further questions or comments on that? All in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, next on the list is the minutes. And Councillor Page, you had a few things you wanted to throw at the dartboard here. And we have the Cultural Development Committee and the Public Library Board minutes.
Yeah, so the one I'll lift out, and Council was sent a correspondence from the chair of the library board at the end of November here.
Yeah.
And then also in your correspondence package, council will find a letter in response from Mayor Bruno, from Mayor Tassani over in Castlegar. And in his letter, they also speak to wanting to work together as a region, share information, and identify opportunities to work together, which is also what the board at the library, specifically around the library, would like to meet with council and be part of those conversations. And so what I'd like to do is get some commitment or some discussion from staff about firming up a date when council and the library board and potentially representatives from Castlegar and maybe other interested parties could sit down and talk about what may or may not be possible for the housing options on the library to pick up what that has been sent to us.
Thank you.
That's right. That's up to council. Council hasn't really come to a conclusion what you want to do on the housing side of this. So I'm not sure whether necessary. I know the library's on the bottom floor. I'm not sure necessarily why the library board is involved in housing. But that's up to council if you think you want to talk to the library board about housing.
Sorry, Kevin, did you get a chance to read this letter?
I think I had a brief look at it. I was again a bit confused why the library board was in the middle of housing. But again, that's up to council. I recognize if we get the grant and are able to move forward with the library building, that the intent is hopefully to get housing on top of it. But as council's aware, we made sure that grant, the library stood alone in the event that the housing piece isn't viable. Certainly, we've had some discussions with both Castlegar and Trail in terms of regional housing. What can we do to support each other? Everything from, I think they possibly some of their own zonings get in the way of them moving forward with some housing projects, and certainly offered our development services staff could talk to their staff or their council around what we've been able to do here in terms of having zoning that's friendly to those type of projects. So sharing best practices, sharing those sorts of things. So that there was some preliminary discussions there, and I think there was a commitment to continue this.
So just to answer CEO Cormac's question there, I'll just go through the bullet points of the letter that Annie, that Chair Holtby laid out, which was that the library wants to be part of these conversations. The library board wants to be part of these philosophical points because of the importance of inclusion and meaningful community engagement process. They want to be part of those discussions and how that's framed. Understanding shared values of housing, residents, and the library regarding accessibility and barrier-free access. Clarifying the community's perception that the library is connected to the housing decision. And further, how the library and housing, although independent of each other, can also support community and social connections, which has been a big piece of the work that the library board has been doing in the last 2 years. So the library, through its own discussions, and actually some of this is not at a meeting I was at, but the board is aware that this is a building that to proceed, the sale of residence is imperative. We recognize the model of housing and targeted demographics as a city decision, and they're just offering their experience and their perspective in good faith for our consideration to help guide some of these conversations, given how integral the community perception will be about this building and the library and the housing and everything that spawned from that. And I think there's going to be a lot of great conversations that come from that. So I would like to move a motion that we have such a workshop before, I don't know a timeline if we have this before April, if that's fine or not, and that we include the library and invite other relevant stakeholders. I don't know if I have a seconder. Okay. So seconded.
Councilor Woodward, yeah. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, it fails. Thank you. Thank you. Next.
Sorry, what happened?
Your motion, I voted opposed. It was 4. It was 3 on the screen that I seen. Cal, Rick, and Janice.
That oppose? Sorry.
3 there.
Can we do that again?
Unless I misunderstood what was on the screen.
Janice, I think, voted for.
I didn't see her hand go up. I'm sorry, guys. You have to indicate clearly to me what if you're for or against. You can't be halfway in between. So, Janice, if your hand's at your mouth, does that mean you're in or out? Okay. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Just gotta go. We all gotta go slow. It's just like.
Put my hand up. It's just that we just gotta go slower. Like,
Yeah.
just
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
John, just say hands up, and so everybody can wave just in case they're not in the screen picture well enough.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought I indicated early on that you needed to take your time. Anyway, so we had a mover and a seconder to have a workshop to have a conversation about housing on top of the library building. And I'm asking for all those in favor. 2. Okay, it carries. Thank you. Thanks. Next, go ahead. Do you have something else there, Councillor Page, on that on that package? I think you said you had 2 items in the reading file.
No, it was just the combination of the Castlegar fees.
Oh, okay. All right. Next is the. If somebody move receipt of that information, then please. Councillor Woodward, seconded by Councillor Page. All in favour? I can't see Councillor Leuchtenberg, but it doesn't matter anyway. Everybody else is in favour. So, next is the reports minus the Rusty Moose, accounts payable and building permits.
Move that.
Move receipt by Councillor Renwick, second by Councillor Woodward. Questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favour? Carried. Late items. There are none. Nothing to be released from the closed. Oh, Councillor Renwick. Nothing to be released from the closed meeting. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I had my hand up for motion to adjourn.
Oh, I see. Okay. Councillor Morrison, do you have something you wanted to add, or are you just seconding that? You got to unmute, my friend.
I have something to add, and that's I just want to give my report from the RD, which didn't need to be in the closed meeting.
Okay, the open meeting, fair enough, yeah.
Okay, so just a couple of quick things. So in the last couple of weeks, I've just attended the Parks meeting, and with a preliminary look at the budget. So it's looking like the Parks budget will increase by 2 to 2.3%. They were using their October numbers with an extrapolation going to the end of the year, but there could be some money that wasn't spent. So maybe that 2 to 2.3% could be reduced. They are looking at continuing to have some money go into reserves that are necessary there. Also, at Rec 5 previously that week, there was a presentation by the cycling club, and that was going to be, that report is being brought back to Parks by the directors, Faust and Newell, with a feeling that it probably belongs more in Parks than it does in Rec 5, but there'll be some discussion there with the Parks partners, because of course Parks is bigger than Rec 5. And then this morning we had the joint, we had the central, I've been to so many waste meetings, we had the central waste meeting. We haven't met, Central Waste hasn't met since February the 19th of 2020. So it's been a while since just the Central Resource Recovery had met. They have some discussions about bag costs for dropping off at the depots. We landed on, and it'll depend on what the other east and west decided too, because we wanted to have some kind of continuity across the board of numbers. But we went for an increased cost of bag drop off to $4 per bag, $3 for a second bag, so $7 for two, or if you're driving over the scales for some reason, which is all kind of beyond my comprehension, I must spend a day at the garbage dump, that you'll be paying a minimum of $7 if you drive over the scales and get weighed. Tipping, we know, is going to increase from the 110 to 125 for 2021. And the good bad news story about central waste is that the projections in the verbal report given today is that we will be going ahead with the forecasted, which was in the 5-year plan from last year, of a 20% increase in 2021 for this service. And the bad news story of that is that given some additional liabilities and costs within central waste, is that number is probably going to be higher than 20% for 2021. And that's that. And my only other question I had was, we did have sort of a little email that was sent amongst us, and I've kept holding on to this article out of the November edition of the paper. And that is, did we write a letter to support the city of Castlegar regarding the potential future closure of the NavCan site there?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes. Could I ask you a couple of questions, Councillor Morrison? I'm kind of weird when it comes to percentages. What does that look like in dollars and cents? Because that's actually what matters to me. So when you have a 2.3% and you got a 20%, which sounds unreal, but anyway, what does that look like? I'm scared of that number.
Okay, well, the 2% is probably a coffee, and the 20% kind of scares me as well, and so we would have to have our CFO tell you what 20% of that budget what a 20% increase looks like over last year's budget. I made some brief notes, Mr. Mayor, to come to the night's meeting, as opposed to bringing any hard and fast numbers. And it was a preliminary report. We didn't actually receive any numbers regarding central waste today. It was a verbal report. We'll be having a central waste meeting probably in January with a more detailed budget at that time.
And last but not least, maybe Colin's got that number by the time I'm done rambling here, but last but not least, what about the people's oversight? If you don't have a meeting from February 19th and we're now at December 7th, is that what we are? Where is the public oversight on happening?
So this year we went to a new, somewhat of a new format, and that is that there are there's joint resource recovery meetings scheduled every month. And so within those meetings, because there's so much overlap between the 3 sub-regions, that most of the information there is done in those meetings. And before that, those joint ones were only 2 or 3 times a year, and then the resource ones were maybe 4 times a year. And what they did was they just regularly scheduled. Some committees that have a couple of issues will try to attach a subcommittee meeting to the end of that long, sometimes 3 to 3.5, 4 hour joint meeting. I did ask at the last joint meeting that we have a separate meeting, because there was these issues regarding costs for drop off at the site, and so we had a meeting today.
Okay, so let me get this right then. If you have a joint resource recovery meeting, are you including central waste conversations in that meeting, or you have a separate meeting after the joint?
Well, we haven't. The central hasn't. Some of the other sub-regions have, but most of the sort of overarching issues, even talking about some of the more complex issues of the HB mine, are being discussed at joint, because they're going to the board anyways for final discussion. So everybody's hearing the discussion about them. So do I think it's the best plan? Not necessarily. I would like to see a little bit more frequency of the sub-region meetings. But one can only continue to push forward and ask whoever the incoming chair is to perhaps schedule meetings a bit more frequently.
Thank you. Colin, do you have any idea what that 20% looks like?
Well, it's a bit of a dangerous question. If it was just a 20% increase to taxes, which it could be, we are looking at 500,000 increase if it's just the tax requisition, which looks to be in line with what, when I look at the 2020 budget compared to 2021, based on the tax requisition. Now, remembering the larger, the cost of capital and operations for 2020 was budgeted at 10 million. The budget for 2021 is 7.8 million. So remembering it does have user fees and different components of revenue, but the tax requisition itself for 2020 was 2.49 million, and 2021 is 2.99. So that's 500,000. City of taxpayer would be on the hook for close to 260,000 of that 250. So just for one service, that's a well, I guess you're looking at not quite, but 3% tax increase on our commercial and residents to fund that portion of one service.
That's before we factor our potential tax increase.
That is just one service at the regional district.
That's not.
Yeah. But there is a hope. I mean, again, the one thing that I will say, and I know that it's difficult, but I'm hoping that all the regional directors would hold staff to, if they are going to break out central waste into compost, waste, recycling, that would be a huge start to really sort of get an understanding of where the costs are coming from and trying to get an understanding of that. We've been told many times that they have a really hard time doing that. So that's fantastic news that they would be able to put that effort in and get that done. So if that's it, I would hopefully through your connections, Councillor Morrison and any other directors you can talk to make sure that if they're working on that they would commit to have that, especially before going into 2021 detailed budget conversations. Because as you know, the city of Nelson pays a chunk of recycling that we shouldn't, and so there could be ways of offsetting a bit of that increase that's coming by having those that use that part of the recycling service fund their portion of it instead of having the city fund it.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Morrison, thank you. That's it for you. Thanks very much. Okay, Council, motion to adjourn. Thanks, everybody. Moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor Page. All in favour? Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you soon. Take care.
And before we all leave, I just want to announce that the Committee of the Whole meeting, our next one, will be my last meeting as a councillor.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Anderson. Sarah, get on your horse.
And before we sign off, I also want to wish Councillor Woodward a happy birthday.
And Janice.
And Cal.
And Cal.
50 for Jesse. Was it too, Cal?
That was the year of the big snow.
It was 50 for Cal too.
And just so y'all know, I've waited for my birthday scotch. Lurie's waiting for me downstairs. I haven't had one yet, so thank you.
Today.
Thank you for making this an early night.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Cal. Happy birthday, Jesse. Happy birthday, Jesse.
All right, take care. Thanks, Brittany. Good to see you. Take care. You have fun today?
Bye.
Yeah, it was great.
Good. Okay.
It felt kind of strange, but I've been doing lots of sitting in front of the computer, so I'm ready to get up and move around.
All right, take care.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye now.